gas is cheaper here.
South Carolina.
What?
How much cheaper is it?
Oh, several dimes.
The difference in Virginia is not that much anymore, is it?
Except at Bassett on 220. I have never found it cheaper.
Must be weight that is involved.
Well, that's what this guy in his back half is doing, is it?
Proceed on the current road.
Ooh,
we can't get there.
We'll proceed when we can, lady.
Yeah.
Now, why did the little pickup truck have to pull out that wide?
Law requires them to have all kinds of protection.
No, but why did he have to pull out, swing out that wide to get out on this road?
You may be just watching. But they didn't have the load on. They were just taking it to where they were going to do it. But they had, like, when I saw it, it was in Ohio somewhere. And they had at least 8 or 10 police cars.
Wow.
Half in front, half behind. Incredible.
We're here at Republic.
Howdy.
Jeff, the guy said down this way to start off. We're still waiting on him.
And our main contact here, and she's going to say a few words to you, but I want to introduce our other dear friend here. Come over here. You and I have a lot in common. Number one, we both went to Georgia Tech. Don't hold that against us. But Hugh's not quite as old. He's a whole lot younger than me.
I thought we were both 39.
We had 32 and you got me. But Hugh Hamilton is the president of Republic Locomotive. They started off as basically a rebuild organization. I'm going to let him tell you more about his organization. But as far as a friend, you couldn't have a better friend than Hugh Hamilton. So, Meg, you want to go first and then let you finish up?
All right.
Okay.
Our company began in 1980. Hugh purchased the company in 1984 and has been sole owner of it ever since. And as Lester said, it began with rebuilds. But very quickly into the company, Hugh decided that he wanted to build a new locomotive. We are the only company in North America that we know of that builds a new industrial locomotive. The RX-500 is one of the most interesting locomotives for industrial use. Of course, we don't go out on the main line, but it is an AC traction locomotive, and Hugh will tell you more about that. But one of the wonderful features of our locomotive is it is completely green. It is AC traction, as I said. It saves over 1 million gallons of fuel over the life of the locomotive. And in this day and time, that is huge, as you can imagine, with fuel prices as they are and the economy as it has been. We feel very fortunate. All of our customers, Russia, Canada, out of the country, have even found greater savings for our locomotive than we knew existed. And that is about as the most important advertisement that we can have, is for our customers to be happy and for them to be saying, this is an extraordinary piece of equipment. And without further, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hamilton.
Thank
you.
Thank you. And, first off, I'd like to welcome you all. Thank you all for coming. We're always honored to have such a group come and visit us. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the company. It goes back, this facility, to 1911. The older building there is started. There's a right rich fella from New York, I suspect from North Carolina, I suspect a lot of you knew about. That was Mr. Duke. And he started, he'd made a ton of money in tobacco. And so then he decided to experiment with this newfangled stuff called electricity. And so he built an electric railroad. And this was the old Piedmont Northern Railroad, and it was electric. Had catenaries running out of here, an overhead catenary all the way Greenwood on this end, all the way up. Eventually, I guess it went up close to Charlotte. And so that was the original beginnings. And then the company merged with the Seaboard, or was bought by the Seaboard. They used to tell P&N bought the Seaboard. And then that was in '67. And then that, of course, evolved into CSX. And so now CSX decided some years back they were going to consolidate their maintenance facilities. And so this one opened up and was available, so we bought it. And we've been here as a company since 1980. Started by Lewis Rhodes out of Atlanta, who originally, his father had been master mechanic here, chief mechanical officer, and he grew up at the P&N, and so he became the chief mechanical officer. Then he went to Atlanta and was in charge of rebuilding locomotives for GE. They decided to shut that facility down, so and move him to Cleveland, and that did not go down well with him, so he decided to go into business for himself and started Republic. And so I came along in '83, and he eased out and I eased in. And so we've been here ever after. Again, as Peggy said, we started rebuilding old locomotives. But day one, I could see that the old locomotives were essentially products of the 30s for the most part, even some going back earlier than that. And so decided that the time had come to put some new technology in the locomotives, and so we gradually moved in that direction, started building a step at a time. Instead of rebuilding in kind, we put some new engines and then new sheet metal, new frames. And then finally, we decided a few years back that we would build a brand new industrial locomotive. Nobody was doing it, and nothing had been done since really those original 1930s designs. So we decided to start with a clean sheet of paper and figure out the best way to do it. As you all, I'm sure, are aware, most of the locomotives were built in the 50s and 60s, the industrial units, to replace the old steam locomotives right after the war. And so in the process, we decided the first thing is we would make no compromises to use the locomotive in a railroad type out. So much more adhesion that we could go with 2 axles instead of 4. That was our Eureka moment. And so with that, you're able to build a lighter locomotive, a smaller locomotive, and all kinds of good things then begin to happen. First off, the costs are considerably less than if you tried to build it with 4 axles and swivel trucks. You can build the axles into the frame, and so then we decided what's the best way to support the locomotive. And you'll see elastomeric suspension. Well, it's used quite a bit in Europe, but very new to the U.S. Then we decided how much horsepower does it need? Well, several hundred. We settled ultimately on 600 horsepower, and that is the biggest, it's the industrial version of the biggest over-the-highway truck engine, which is a Cummins QSX-15. And when you go that route, now the engine is less expensive, much easier to maintain, very modern, and because the engine is used in trucks, that's where so much of the R&D is, and it's very competitive, and so they have become extremely reliable in the trucking industry to where we're seeing about 1 million miles to overhaul now in trucks, which was unheard of just a few years back. So that has translated into our locomotive, that engine has proved to be very reliable. And then when you go with AC traction, you wind up eliminating all the brushes, commutators, switchgear, and it just makes it very simple, and yet it's very sophisticated. And so we had to wait till the cost of those systems came down, but we could see it. We followed the trends for about 10 years before that. So we were sort of ready and waiting when it got to a point that the pricing was affordable and the packaging was such that we could get it onto an industrial locomotive. So we now build, by the way, I'm assuming everybody's a little bit familiar with AC traction and how that works and how it differs from DC. The net is that you get so much more adhesion that you can build it, what you gain in adhesion, you can reduce in weight and still get the same amount of tractive effort. So that's the real benefit of AC. Now the Class 1 railroads took their existing package, the big 6-axle 200-tonners, and gave them a lot more adhesion to where they could replace, they used to say replace 5 SD40s, for instance, with 3 of the new AC units. Well, we decided to go with a tractive effort requirement, basically the same as an SW1200, and then reduce the package size so that we would have the same amount of pulling power. The SW1200 being the old workhorse in industry for many years. So that has met with real success out in the industry. So we then figured out that we could build a locomotive that one size fits all. So our basic locomotive is good for about 95–98% of all industrial applications. And we modify the units with add-on options such as radio control or air conditioning, automatic uncouplers, all sorts of miscellaneous things that the customers can get to modify it for their particular application.
Tell them about Siberia.
Including Siberia. We sold a couple of them over there, and needless to say, they needed cold weather packages. And so we put fuel tank heaters on it. We put all kinds of special cab heaters and did a few other things we had to do to make sure it would survive in that environment, and it has survived beautifully. They called us one day and told us it was 70 degrees below zero. So it was a chilly day in Siberia, but the locomotive was running. So we've had a lot of fun with that one. So anyway, that's what you will see today, and we'll take a little quick walk through the plant. And on the way, you'll see a lot of things. We're not doing any grinding or anything that's going to cause a problem, so we don't need any protective gear. So we're good to go through. And then we'll go out and see the locomotive on the other end. And by the way, that the trick about dying with the most toys, let me tell you about one of our customers. Don't know if you've heard of the company Cogentrix, but they bought a number of locomotives from us, and the owner of the company, just a really nice fellow, and he was telling me one time he had his grandchildren there, and they were visiting with him, and so he said, well, why don't we go get on the locomotive, and we can play with that and run it a little bit. And he was laughing. He said after they did that, the grandchildren said to him, "Granddaddy, you have the best toys." This is an old P&N shop where they did all the shop and repairs of the cars and locomotives. It was legalized in 1955, and then that's when the high bay was in. Otherwise, lower side like this all the way down. This is the lower part of the frame. It's made out of 2-inch plate and some 3-inch plate. And we have a company that, Nucor runs the steel parts. And they have the most modern rolling plant in the country to make beautiful steel. And then we have a company in Florence that burns it to shape. We don't have a big burning table. So, as business has picked up, we decided to quit fabricating these ourselves and actually trained that company to build this mainframe. And they do a great job for us. Weighs about 60,000 pounds raw. And then the top plate weighs close to 40,000 pounds. And then we begin constructing the locomotive on top of this plate as far as the upper part of it. These are the cab hoods, the way we started to assemble, set everything in place on them, and then just build it up from there.
Use a Cummins engine?
Yeah. ABB. No.
ABB is the electrical, is that what you said?
Kind of how it goes. Generally, they come in painted, and this is what we call our Republic Safety Yellow. And incidentally, all of the exterior sheet metal is stainless. We've just seen so many old rusted out cabs through the years that we decided to make them out of stainless. And it's a utility grade of stainless. It does not have nickel, but it has 12% chrome. So it will actually stain, but it will not rust. So 30, 40 years from now, somebody's going to thank me for that. This is the engine package. This is a Cummins Inline 6, rated at 600 horsepower. This is our generator, alternator, and zero maintenance. Has electronic voltage regulation, so there's nothing to maintain. This is the power side of the electronics. We feed the electronics and we convert from 480 volt, 3-phase, 60 cycle, variable frequency, which will go anywhere from 0 on up. We, in order to make sure that the cab is totally safe, we communicate from here into the cab to the inboard computers with the fiber optic cable. So no high voltage ever goes into the cab.
They got the amp on that?
Well, I think there's
the amp, sorry.
See the muffler up top, that's a residential grade muffler, so the locomotive is a good deal quieter than most of the old ones.
If everybody could get up closer right now, let's talk about pictures as we're running the locomotive.
Oh, there's good air conditioning.
I like Polish air conditioning.
Yeah.
55 mile an hour.
Get the engine run switch. Crank her up.
No meters, huh? No meters. Or are they up there?
Well, we've got all kind of diagnostics. That's the drive diagnostics. And you'll see it all, it's booting up right now. This is the engine diagnostics. Okay. We can look at lots of things.
That's doing that all automatic now.
This is air?
Yeah, we've got plenty of air. This is a control stand. The way we designed it, everything to operate or to set it up is over here. Everything to operate it is over here. And in here, each of those is a computer. And here are those fiber optic cables coming in I told you about.
Yeah.
That is our proprietary brake system, the controls for it. It's all electro-pneumatic. And who wants to drive it first?
They're pointing at me, so I guess it's...
Go ahead, Ed.
Okay, Lester wants you to look out there whenever you sit down so he can get a picture as well.
Want me to give this to you?
I'll be glad to take it if you show me how to, if you want it.
It's video,
Oh, it's video.
so you just point and shoot. What's that?
And where is the,
You here?
I'll be the fireman.
This is on. Push it once, it's recording. Push it again, it shuts it off.
Where will I
Hey.
shovel the coal?
Howdy! You guys are... Don't get in my way. I've already done that.
Need over here.
Okay.
All right.
Now, this is the joystick throttle. Push it that way, it goes that way. If you're moving that way and you pull it back, that starts a dynamic brake, slowing it down. But we also have a full air brake system, which is this. Push it up, take it down, takes the brake off. All right, don't need to worry about that. We don't have a train. That tells you how hard it's pulling. That tells you the speed. Don't have to worry about whether you over throttle it. The computer will take over. It'll say, "Old Ed's feeling a little frisky this morning," and so we'll override him here. All right. Let's hit the bell. Does everybody know we're going to move? Why don't you blow that? All right, knock your brakes off.
Yeah, 2 to go forward, 3 to go back.
Got a little deadband. It'll take a second to move it in. Whoops. Goes better with the handbrake off. Okay, that's slower down here. Okay, that's it, reverse. Pull it back in.
I can operate that while we're moving.
Okay, let's move her back that direction. Okay, now push in the other direction. That's the dynamic kicking in. And
like that one, yeah. They know we're willing to drive this one too.